Hey YouTube, Matt here. Welcome back to my channel. In today's art-related video, I thought I would deviate away a little bit from perspective for a moment and just show you my general approach to drawing a figure from my imagination, and specifically a 3/4 turn standing pose. I always find these to be the most enjoyable poses to draw because you can really build a character when you have the framework down, and doing this does apply some of the technical rules that I've already demonstrated. So I've got a sheet here, 9 by 12 inch Bristol, and a basic F pencil, my go-to choice. So I'm going to get started here. And like I always say, I map out my horizon line. So about halfway through the page, I'm not even going to use a rule. I'm just going to lightly guide in this horizon line as a basis for where our eye level is on this character. Now, considering we've got the horizon line, I'm going to determine, is my character looking to the left or to the right? If the character is looking to, if I want to have this character looking, let's say to the left, facing left. So I'm going to draw my line of action. The line of action denotes the flow of energy through the character's body, and basically the pose at a relaxed standing upright position. It's not a straight line. The human body is composed of S curves and C curves, and when we get into anatomy, you're really going to understand how that applies. But you're going to see it here when I demonstrate. So we've got a line of action. I'll usually mark off the midway point of the body around the horizon line here, because it adds a kind of a cool effect in this dynamic. I consider this a dynamic pose. Even though it's not hyper intense with action, it's still, again, it displays these curves in the body. So this is going to be a guy. We're going to be drawing a male. So I've got and I'm going to kind of blast through using my knowledge of anatomy a little bit just to demonstrate how I go about roughing out this basic pose here. So you've got your rib cage, your torso, mapping out a very loose rendition of the pelvis here. Now, I always ground my legs first. I always try to situate the feet, plant them firmly on the ground, because you'll find that it is something actually quite tricky to do. So, and I also want to point out, because the character is facing left, we're going to choose a vanishing point to the left, and imagine it's going to be off the page here. So we're going to just mark off, let's say, all these lines are converging this way towards the vanishing point to the left here off page. And of course, so shoulders are going to be at an angle, head is going to be at an angle, the eyes, because he's facing this way, and so your hips are basically at eye level here. Knees are going to be at that angle, again converging. These lines are receding to the vanishing point off page, and the feet as well. So I try to keep your figure framed within the page you're drawing. That's why I also recommend planting the feet first, because you can either situate the pelvis, work down, and then work up, which I like to do. I always start with the pelvis and then get the feet planted. And one more thing I'm pointing out here is I'm using proportions, the correct proportions. So you can see how the legs are, there's kind of a curve, like, it's an S curve here. And that's working in accordance with the skeletal structure. The way the femur is shaped, it's got a natural curve in it. The tibia, the fibia, the arms, the spine, of course. You can see the spine it's curving like an S here. So you can see that. And when I'm building this framework, I usually do it very quickly. I mean, I'm doing it relatively quickly here, just to show you. So you've got your knees are going to be around this location here, and then so there's 1 foot. Now I would actually pull these feet up a bit, just because I don't want anything cut off out of the frame. I want to keep everything nicely within the frame of this page. So let's see if we're seeing almost straight on view of this foot, and the other foot is going to perhaps even come at an angle. And remember, it's always great to, I recommend correcting all your mistakes or errors. If you draw something that isn't quite right, just erase it. And that's why drawing lightly is imperative. Draw softly. until you're confident enough to, until you want to finalize those lines, and then you can draw with a little more pressure, because drawing lightly allows you to erase easily and make those fixes. And as you can see here, it's not always easy situating the feet, planting them nicely, creating the illusion of some weight there, as if the character is just... So I'm going to move these knees up because I want to bring the feet in. So I'm making all these slight adjustments so that everything works. And again, you're in control. As the artist, you're deciding where everything is going to be. I don't want this character's feet cropped, so I'm going to just adjust this until they are on the page and everything is looking correct. Everything's where I want it to be. Okay, that's not too bad. This is quite... Yeah, gonna fix that a little bit here. Okay, so considering the rules of proportion, just to go over that briefly. So the pelvis is about a head tall, and then there is the rib cage is 2 heads tall. 1, 2. You've got a gap here, the abdominal region. Then you've got the neck is slight. It's about 1/3 of the size of the head. And then you've got from the pelvis to the kneecap 2 heads, kneecap to the bottom of the feet 2 heads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8.5 standard male figure height. You've got the feet, of course. So, I mean, you can see that it's resembling an accurately depicted, proportionately depicted human figure. And then, of course, again, minding perspective, always being mindful of perspective, so you can see how everything is receding. All of these, what they're called, are landmarks. Landmark, base of the ribs, top of the ribs, the collarbone. You're gonna, because you can see these parts of the human figure. You can see these parts through the skin. So we count those as landmarks. And you've got the top sections of the hips, the pelvis. These are called the iliac crest. I'm going to go over all the anatomy. We're going to really break down figure drawing down the road. But I just want to jump into this and show you guys what you can expect, actually. What you can expect down the road as I really get into building figures and doing them relatively quickly from my imagination, and realizing that once you have the knowledge of the frame, you can get really creative and just build on top of this and start adding all kinds of cool details. Clothing, you can even deviate away from this figure being a human, start adding additional appendages, and just make it otherworldly if you wanted to. And again, this is the power you have once you understand what a human figure actually looks like. Okay, another landmark rule or proportion rule here. At the base of the rib cage is where your elbow is, and then your hand, your arm. So halfway through this mark off, so femur's 2 heads tall. Halfway through here, the tips of your fingers are gonna touch. So now you can see, hopefully you can see here on the camera. I'm gonna just pull it up and down so you can see. I've got this foot's looking kind of rough here. So like I mentioned, it's tough planting feet. It's something sometimes I get it right away, sometimes I don't. It's just a matter of sometimes it just turns out, and you have to wrestle with it sometimes. It's not always going to come out perfectly, and that's just the way it works. Sometimes it's a grind, and that's okay. That is art. If you can get past that, you're miles ahead of really yourself. You're in competition with yourself. But if you can battle it out, and it is a battle, if you can battle it out without getting frustrated or just quitting, then you are making progress, big time, serious progress. So as you can see, we've got a very rigid, rough, loose figure here, depicted in proportion and adhering to perspective. Now, as I mentioned in a prior video, you see the rib cage. Let's see, if I was to draw this in a box, as a box, I would have, you see the line of actions coming here. and we'd see slightly beneath this box, and we'd see, you know, the side here, because he's on a turn, he's on a 3/4 turn, so we're going to see this side, and the, you know, rib cage is going to fit within this box here. And then of course you've got your gap, the gut, and then the pelvis you're going to see slightly above here. And again, you can line this up. Pelvis almost lines up here, as like that. Line of action coming through, and then so you guys can see here that the figure is boxes, and boxes that are tilting and turning because of the direction we're depicting the figure, and of course because we are adhering to perspective. So you can see how these lines are converging to, again, that vanishing point that's off the page. And same with the head. See, so you've got that nice S curve of the spine that's coming through, and then the head, you know, I'm envisioning it tilting down a little bit, give it that kind of dramatic look. So you might see a little bit of the top of the skull as if he's kind of looking down and towards the camera, just to make it interesting. You know, the cool thing about learning anatomy is that every time you study it, you kind of pick up something new, so that you can, and you're going to be able to add that to your archive of knowledge each time you go at it. So that's why I have such great fun drawing the figure, and especially from scratch, and most especially this pose. This is, you could say it's an easier pose. There are challenges to doing this, of course, but this is a great way to really not only practice proportions, but practice building atop the skeleton using muscles and, like I said, clothing. You can actually, you know, you can draw a single figure, muscle it out, do a man, do a woman, and then use it as if you've got a light table or a light desk, you can use it as a guide for just drawing over it, building on top of it, using the light table to draw clothing and armor and anything else, anything you can dream up. So you've got that guide to already use. I don't actually do that often. I draw the figure from scratch every time, just because I like doing it. It's fun to practice. So let's throw on a little bit of muscle here, just so you can get an idea of what this figure can look like. So we've got, so let's see, you've got the, now a lot of the bones, like I was mentioning, a lot of the bones of the rib cage, they're going to show through. The muscle sits on top of the skeleton, but through the skin, you will see those, like I mentioned, the landmarks and the way particular muscles protrude as they develop. When you have developed, see, for instance, the pectoralis here, the chest. You've got the trapezius back here. Let's see, just, again, it's all very rough. I like, you know, quick, scratchy, rough lines, and you're finding your lines. You know, I drew that trapezius a little bit too big. I can see that it's too high. It's coming up too high. Here it's going to pull back. You've got the deltoid here, shoulder muscle, pec. You're going to see more of the pec because it's on that angle. So the pec is actually going to take precedence here in front of the shoulder. And again, we're being mindful of perspective, so everything's going to nicely recede with these angled lines we have as markers. And again, taking your time is there's no shame in drawing slowly. If you're learning, draw slowly, draw carefully, accurately. You know, we can even like block in before we get crazy hyper with the detail, just to carefully map out. So that's looking better. See the way I'm mapping it a little bit slowly here, so you can see that. And there is a method, of course, to depicting muscles accurately. The muscles have a very particular shape. And, you know, starting with cylinders is great. Map everything out with nice cylinders so you can carve out the shapes of the muscles as you build this figure further. Groin down here. Got the latissimus dorsi muscles, the wings, as they're colloquially called. If any of you guys are active in the gym, you've probably got some basic knowledge of anatomy just from training certain muscles, learning how to train muscle groups, learning what the muscle groups are. All right, so we've got the rectus abdominis here, your abs. The top two abs curve up kind of like this. And there's eight pairs to this core muscle structure here. You usually see people with a developed core that have 6 abs, but down here, there's actually, if you have a really developed core, then you'll see these last 2 down here visible. And then you'll have, of course, so they kind of wall off here. The belly button is just above that first pair at the base here. There's the belly button. These are muscles here. Then you've got the obliques, the oblique muscles, and the obliques connect to the serratus, if I'm not mistaken, serratus anterior. I'm going completely off the top of my head with knowledge here. I'm usually not spending time thinking about the names, but for the sake of this video, I want to share with you guys, just so you get an understanding of what you're actually looking at, what's being constructed here. Then your knees, the kneecaps have a very particular shape because of the way the patella, the bone at the kneecap, protrudes through the skin. And then, you know, the lower leg bones here, the fibia and tibia, they are S-curved as well. And there's a point on the pelvis, I believe it's right around here on those crests, where a lot of the muscles connect to, of the legs, the lower leg. So you've got the muscles kind of, they wrap around the knees like this. You've got that very distinct teardrop shape. So you've got the vastus series of muscles, vastus medialis, lateralis, erectus femoris. We're going to go deep into anatomy and break down each muscle. We'll spend time just attaching each individual muscle to the bone so you can see. It's just a great refresher even for myself just to get into it and really dig deep. You can never study enough anatomy. Learning how the muscles attach and how they work. And of course here you've got, so this kneecap actually, because he's turned, he's tilted, he's angled 3/4 this way. You got the gastrocnemius, the calf. And you're going to see, yeah, it's quite rough, but I'm doing this quickly just to show you guys what a figure looks like. Again, having a little issue with that foot. You know, you just kind of grind at it until it looks semi-correct. You can always correct it later, but situating that figure firmly on the ground is something that you'll want to do early on. Trying to do it afterwards can be even more challenging, I find. This is your ankle bone, interior ankle bone here, that you can feel, you can see. See, I'm thinking he might actually okay, it's a little bit better here. It's also a little bit tricky because I'm drawing so quickly here just to show you guys what the figure is meant to look like when it's drawn to proportions. And when it's turned on this angle here. So you get a general idea here. It's not perfect by any means. I did this quickly, but you can see once you have proportions down, you can take your time, really build on it accurately, draw slowly. And you can see just forming in the muscles of the forearm here, at the elbow, bicep, brachialis, triceps. And again, of course, your eraser is going to be an extraordinarily important tool in drawing the figure, because what I like to do even sometimes is just lightly erase over everything and use these lines as a guide for creating even more finished, cleaner lines. And it gives you a chance to kind of do them over again before you go to ink. You can really touch up your line work, so you have a more finalized line that makes it easier as a guide to do some inking. When I do finished portrait pieces, this is, and if you have a brush, it's excellent for erasing all over the page quickly, efficiently. Recommended if you have access to one. So as we can see here, things are not perfectly centered, so I might want to just clean that up. And we can add some more. Now we can start really finalizing those muscles here where we've established where a lot of them are going to be. See, this leg was a little bit, it was protruding too far out and a little bit too thick here, so we can just pull that in. And you can see how it's already looking more refined. And this is, this is a great way to clean up your work. And before you jump to ink, because you might, you don't want to ink it incorrectly. You want to ink it disproportionately, or, his head I think is a little bit too low, so I'm gonna bring that up a little bit and bring the eye level up. Now it's looking, you can see it's coming along much nicer, much cleaner. Studying, when you start studying the muscles, you'll see the way that they attach to the bones, and the way that they appear, the shadows, the divots, all of the mass of the muscles and the muscle bellies, how they really sit atop the skeletal structure. And I'm drawing this from my imagination. It's just great practice. I still reference anatomy, of course, depending on different poses. I mean, it's kind of a lifelong journey with anatomy. It's very challenging, but it's very rewarding, because like I said, once you start learning more anatomy, you're going to learn, and you're going to be able to depict it without having to reference as much. So it becomes just, it's kind of like putting a puzzle together in a sense. That's pretty much, that's one of the exciting things about this. It becomes almost like a game. And then, and you're not going to see every line, every striation on the muscles. You're going to see the protrusion of these muscle heads as they're developed. If you look at a bodybuilder, you can see how certain muscles, they jut out like these teardrops. If I'm not mistaken, this is the rectus femoris muscle. I might be mistaken on that. And you've got this is the sartorius that comes around to the, and again, you're not going to see it quite like that. You might see, depending on how developed the muscularity is, but you'll definitely see that teardrop, and you will see this large muscle here. This is the, it's escaped me, this muscle here. You've got your knees. I'm gonna bring these down a little bit. So, learn the bones, learn the muscles, learn proportions. I'm gonna go over all of these things because I want all of you guys to gain as much knowledge as you can, so you can start doing this and just have a blast, building the human figure. The human figure is one of the most coveted things to draw, because it's, it really is, it's intimidating, it's challenging, but once you've got a basic understanding of how to go about doing it, and you will develop your own system, you'll devise your own system for drawing anatomy, and you're going to kind of have to, because everyone learns differently. So once that comes, it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be really exciting, and I'm going to take you guys through it, piece at a time. We're going to break it all down, go over it slowly, accurately. I'll go over all the different Latin terms just so you have an understanding of the bit of the theory behind the muscles, the scientific terms, and you can really just understand how the body works, how it functions, how everything pieces together to form this miraculous thing we call the human body. It's quite the instrument. And, you know, look at the hands. I mean, we're using our hands to make extraordinary art. Whatever kind of art you make, just the fact that we have hands to build and to use in the ways we do. And again, see the head, you can turn the direction of it. So you're going to see more of it's going to be more of an angle like this. Actually, yeah, it's going to be like this. And then, so eye level might be here, you know. And again, everything has a lot of detail, and there are tricks to depicting each of these aspects. So the head, you know, say the head, even the proportions of the head adhere to the golden rectangle rule, which is something I'll have to bring up when I start doing design videos. Top of the ear lines up with the top of the eyes, bottom of the ear lines up with the nose. Do that a little bit too short here. Eyebrows. There's a equilateral triangle between the center of the eyes, the base of the nose, and between the eyes. You'll get an equilateral triangle. So you'll know if you've drawn your face accurately if this turns out here. And so again, you've got these markers. The top of the eyebrow ridge, the eye ridge, and the base of the nose is where your ears start and stop. Halfway between each eye is where your lips stop. And then you've got, you know, your chin. Again, this is drawing a male, a masculine figure here. A male figure. It's different on females. It's softer. It's less angular, less rigid. And we'll get into drawing women perhaps in the next video shortly, because I just want to show you guys what you can do and how things look. And, you know, I haven't even touched on, you know, putting shadows and choosing a light source for this, but, you know, we're going to, you know, when you start shading in muscles, you're going to start adding a serious layer of depth and dimension to the figure and the form. It's going to look as it ought to look. Now let's see, our light source is coming this way onto the teardrop here. Even on top of the bulk of muscle here on the leg, even the abdominals. You know, again, it all depends on your light source. If the light source is coming from above his shoulder, up here perhaps, facing him, you know, you might have the light, shadows might be depicted in such a way. It all depends on where your light source is coming from. So perhaps I'll save this figure, or I'll just draw another one and throw some shadow on it so you guys can see. Going back to my head over here. So again, so we had our horizon line down here, head's above the horizon line, so you'll probably see some of the chin down here, or sorry, beneath the neck, and you'll see some of the side of his head. If he was to turn, you know, see these lines are converging to a vanishing point off the page this way. I hope you guys can see. I've kept my camera tilted horizontally so you can see this video nicer on your screen instead of that vertical with the sides cut off. So I'm just gonna share with you what I've done so far. You can see here. So I'd say his feet are planted quite firmly on the ground. And then, you know, this part, again, just showing you what, if we had him even more of a tilt, you know, then it would be, something like this, and the center here, and, you know, eye up here, ear would be somewhere around here, you know, nose. This is just showing you the face, the side of the head and how it would turn in space. And you'd actually, yeah, again, I didn't do that correctly, because you would see some of the underside of his chin and neck. Yeah. Okay. All right. So again, it's, you know, the more knowledge you acquire, the more control you'll have in manipulating the angles of everything, the head. You know, throw some ears on here just to make them look even more human. And, you know, I'm thinking about the way the skull is structured, cheekbones coming down. You've got the ridge of the brow. See, so then you can start building within. You can see how it's coming together. Remember, equilateral triangle, space, nose is going to be here. Nose is at the base of the ears. Bottom of the nose, base of ears. Top of brow ridge, top of ears. I'm going to extend that jaw a little bit further down. And again, you can control, you know, how rigid is his jaw going to be? How thick is his cheeks going to be? Is he overweight? Is he lean? You decide all of this with the stroke of your pencil on the page. You decide everything. And with that kind of control, you can really create very distinct looking characters. And I mean, you can let your creativity you can go to town with it and just really create something cool with your drawing. And I mean, yeah. And again, this is so basic. This is a 3/4 turn. So just to reiterate here, we had our line of action initially. Horizon line was around the pelvic region, so it would actually be a little bit lower. Line of action, we situated our feet on this angle. So think of the base of your heel is going to be touching this receding line to the vanishing point. And again, I drew this because it's acting as a guide for where to situate his feet in perspective. Pelvis, leg here, leg here. You see the leg, we've got a C curve here and an S curve here because of the stance. It's the shape the legs are going to take on. This one is less noticeable, but it is still, you know, that C curve, S curve. You can see you've got the rib cage, pelvis, and the head. You know, everything is in perspective here. Collarbone, clavicle, arms. And actually this one came a little bit lower, so the feet are planted. So there we go. There is our 3/4 turn facing the left, and we actually turned his head to face us. But there's your figure in perspective with the horizon line, still at it, still applying perspective, and in relatively strong proportions, according to the proportions of the human body, as we've come to learn what those are. So again, it all helps. All these pieces come together. Skeletal structure, the line of action, guiding the flow of the bones in the direction they'll curve. See, if you're looking at your legs straight on, they're going to kind of look like this. The femur is going to turn in, kneecap, and then the other bones are going to come. That's just the way the figure, your pelvis here. It's the way the figure looks, the skeleton looks. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. The bones have a natural kind of curve to them. So actually, yeah. And it creates this kind of S curve, C curve. and the muscles sit on top. And it creates a really aesthetic looking form because our eyes are drawn to faces and human figures, and the more fit a human figure is, it becomes something appealing to look at. There's beauty to the form, beauty to the design of the human figure. Yeah. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you for tuning in to this relatively brief, I hope, I wasn't looking at the clock, so this is probably over 10 minutes, but again, just to show you what you can do once you have some understanding of anatomy, some understanding of the weight of the figure, the forms of the bones, the muscles, how they situate themselves on top of the frame. And again, this is such a basic pose. It's basic and it isn't. It requires a lot of knowledge of proportion, anatomy, building the figure in perspective, but it's a great starting point before you get very dynamic with posing. You know, you have a character curled up in a ball. You're gonna have to understand how the muscles of the back work, and I'll get into that with another video. We're gonna break everything down. I'm just gonna keep doing this until you guys know as much as I do, if not more. I hope we can all just sink our teeth into all of this and just understand everything about the figure so we can all be having an excellent time building characters from scratch and sharing them and building worlds. This is where it begins. If you can draw the figure, people are going to want to look at it, and then you can start telling some awesome stories with your characters. So, all right, friends, you guys have a great one, and I will catch you in another video. Peace.